Hey there, South Africa. Let's talk about something serious today. Puppet leaders. You know the type. They talk a big game about justice and equality, but when push comes to shove, they're whispering sweet nothings in the oppressor's ear. These so-called leaders have been around since the dark days of apartheid. Back then, they were easy to spot. Slick suits, fancy cars, always dining and whining with the powers that be. But now they're slicker, more cunning, more dangerous. They talk left but walk right, preaching prosperity for all while lining their own pockets. They tell us to be patient, to wait for the brighter tomorrow that never seems to come. All the while they're getting richer, their families are getting wealthier, and the rest of us stagnant, stuck.
The white people have benefited, my man. You must never run away from them.
I'm not disagreeing.
And when we talk liberation, it's liberation of black people in general and Africans in particular. And those people must feel that somebody's fighting for them. And those people must feel that somebody's fighting for them. And those people must feel that somebody's fighting for them. I think you're calling for disaster.
You're calling for disaster, Julius.
Let me tell you, you'll have an unled revolution. Unled revolution is anarchy. Once this marginalized, once these people who are oppressed don't feel represented, they are going to come for me and you. Especially ourselves who stay in the suburbs.
You're right.
So somebody must make them feel accommodated. Somebody must be seen to be fighting for them. So somebody must make them feel accommodated. Somebody must be seen to be fighting for them. So somebody must make them feel accommodated. Somebody must be seen to be fighting for them. So that they don't stand up on their own, unled, and then create anarchy. So the EFF closes that gap and says to them, don't be that angry, we're attending to your issues.
These puppet leaders are masters of illusion. They know how to play the game, how to keep us pacified with promises and platitudes. But
Is this one of those moments where you're now saying, okay, the rest of you guys think that the EFF is a loony socialist entrepreneurial party that, sure, Malema's rich, but how did he get rich? You know, it's like, follow the dots. And yet you're saying to us, a little bit like maybe what you did in 2021, that there's another side to this picture, or are you saying the lesser of two evils?
I'm saying the EFF is a lesser of two very bad evils.
These puppet leaders are masters of illusion. They know how to play the game, how to keep us pacified with promises and platitudes. But here's what they don't realize. The oppressor is not loyal. The moment they're no longer useful, they'll be discarded.
So to me, MK is a bigger threat than the EFF, and here's why. The EFF has been in coalition with the DA in municipalities, has been in coalition with the ANC and others. And the reports that I've had are that they are actually pragmatic. If in a coalition in a municipality, the EFF say they're going to do something, they tend to do it, saying they're a force of good. They're not. But what I am saying is the MK is a bigger threat to stability than the EFF. Both are loonies. The EFF will sell whatever snake oil keeps them in the game. And remember, they are less than 10%. They've stagnated, they've been humiliated. And Julius Malema, deep down, is a capitalist. He owns tons of properties. He's a member of the Ananda Club. His kids go to private schools. He wants to be one of the economic ruling class.
But here's what they don't realize. The oppressor is not loyal. The moment they're no longer useful, they'll be discarded, left to be devoured by the very masses they've been lying to. Sound familiar? It should. This isn't just history repeating itself. This is our present. And if we don't do something, it'll be our future too. So what can we do? Start by questioning everything. Don't take their words at face value. Look at their actions. Who are they really serving? Who benefits from their policies? If it's not the people, then it's time to hold them accountable. Ever heard the saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me? Let's not be fooled again. Let's demand transparency, integrity and real action. Let's make it clear that we're not interested in empty promises or false hopes. We want real change. We deserve real change. South Africa, it's time to wake up. Time to see these puppet leaders for what they really are. Let's stop letting them pacify us with their sweet talk and start holding them to their word. Because our future, it's too important to be left in the hands of those who would sell it out for their own gain. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and most importantly, stay united. The power is in our hands. Let's use it. Thanks for watching.
The South African political landscape is no stranger to controversy, yet the alleged clandestine meeting between Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, and Lord Robin Renwick, former British ambassador to South Africa, sent shockwaves through the nation. The secrecy surrounding the meeting, held under the Chatham House rule, fueled suspicion and ignited a firestorm of speculation. Critics cried foul, accusing Malema of a clandestine pact with a figure they perceived as a symbol of Western imperialism. The clandestine nature of the meeting immediately raised red flags. Why the secrecy? What was discussed behind closed doors? Speculation ran rampant, with critics alleging that the meeting was more than a casual encounter. Some whispered that it signified a sinister agenda, a move by external forces to manipulate South African politics from the shadows. The meeting became a lightning rod for criticism, particularly from those who viewed Renwick with deep suspicion. His past as a British diplomat during a tumultuous period in South African history made him an easy target for accusations of neocolonialism. Critics questioned his motives, suggesting that he sought to advance Western interests at the expense of South Africa's sovereignty. At the heart of the controversy lies the accusation that Renwick, a seasoned diplomat with a history of involvement in South African affairs, was attempting to exert undue influence over Malema. Critics pointed to Renwick's past actions, particularly his role in the negotiations that led to the end of apartheid, as evidence of a pattern of behind-the-scenes maneuvering. They argued that Renwick was a master manipulator, skilled at pulling strings and shaping events to his liking. Malema, once a fiery critic of Western imperialism and a vocal advocate for radical economic policies, seemed to have undergone a dramatic shift in his stance. His fiery rhetoric had softened, replaced by a more pragmatic tone. He appeared to have abandoned his earlier calls for the nationalization of mines and land expropriation without compensation, policies that had been central to his political identity. This perceived turnaround fueled suspicions that Renwick had somehow influenced Malema's thinking, perhaps even offering political favors in exchange for a more moderate approach. The accusations painted a picture of a grand conspiracy, with Renwick as the puppet master and Malema as his unwitting puppet. Adding fuel to the fire were Malema's recent criticisms of Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, a longtime ally. This unexpected turn of events further cemented the belief among some that external forces were at play, shaping Malema's political trajectory to align with Western interests. The accusations, though unsubstantiated, cast a long shadow over Malema and his political future. Lord Renwick, for his part, vehemently denied the accusations levied against him. He dismissed the notion that he was a puppet master, orchestrating events from the shadows. In a carefully worded statement, he acknowledged meeting with Malema, but downplayed the significance of the encounter. He insisted that the meeting was merely a chance encounter, a brief conversation during which he offered Malema some general advice. Renwick maintained that he had cautioned Malema against resorting to violence and racial rhetoric, urging him to embrace a more inclusive and peaceful approach to politics. Renwick scoffed at the idea that he had any interest in manipulating South African politics. He argued that such accusations were not only baseless, but also insulting to both him and the South African people. He asserted that South Africa was perfectly capable of governing itself without interference from outsiders. Furthermore, Renwick highlighted his long-standing support for the fight against corruption in South Africa. He pointed to his public criticisms of state capture and his praise for those who had bravely spoken out against wrongdoing, such as former public protector Thuli Madonsela. Renwick's defense, while firm, did little to quell the suspicions of his critics. Section 4. Shifting Sands, Malema's Transformation. The controversy surrounding the meeting brought into sharp focus the dramatic evolution of Julius Malema's political persona. Once a firebrand youth leader known for his radical rhetoric and uncompromising stance, Malema had undergone a significant transformation in the years since his expulsion from the African National Congress. Gone were the days of fiery speeches calling for the nationalization of mines and land expropriation without compensation. In their place was a more measured approach, one that acknowledged the complexities of governing and the need for pragmatic solutions. Malema's economic policies, once considered radical, had softened, now advocating for a more mixed economy with a greater role for the private sector. This shift in ideology, coupled with his meeting with Renwick, led some to question whether Malema had abandoned his principles in pursuit of power. Had the once fiery revolutionary become a pragmatist, willing to compromise his ideals for the sake of political expediency? The answer, like many things in South African politics, was far from straightforward. Some argued that Malema's evolution was a natural progression, a sign of his political maturity. They pointed to his growing support base and his ability to connect with a wider audience as evidence that he was evolving into a more sophisticated and effective leader. Others, however, remained unconvinced, viewing his transformation with suspicion. They saw it as a betrayal of the revolutionary ideals he once espoused, a cynical ploy to gain power at any cost. Section 5. South Africa at a crossroads. The controversy surrounding the Renwick-Malema meeting unfolded against the backdrop of a nation grappling with its post-apartheid identity. South Africa, once hailed as a beacon of hope and a model for democratic transition, found itself facing a myriad of challenges. Soaring inequality, rampant corruption, and a stagnant economy threatened to derail the hard-fought gains of the past 2 decades. In this context, the allegations of external interference in South African politics struck a sensitive chord. The spectre of colonialism, of powerful nations meddling in the affairs of weaker ones, loomed large in the national psyche. The idea that South Africa's hard-won sovereignty could be so easily undermined fueled a deep sense of unease and resentment. The controversy also highlighted the deep divisions that still existed within South African society. Racial tensions, economic inequality, and political polarization continued to simmer beneath the surface, threatening to erupt at any moment. The Renwick-Malema affair served as a stark reminder of the fragility of the country's democracy and the challenges it faced in forging a united and prosperous future. Section 6. The price of secrecy. The Renwick-Malema affair served as a stark reminder of the importance of transparency and accountability in political leadership. The secrecy surrounding the meeting eroded public trust and fueled suspicion. It underscored the need for open and honest dialogue, for leaders who are willing to engage with their constituents and address their concerns.
The most important person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs.